We're wet today, huh? I'm so happy that it's anything but 100. Just a quick recap of the last game. Obviously, there's a lot of things after a first game that you look at that you say some guys played extremely well, some guys did a lot of good things, other guys have certain things that they can improve on. But I think the biggest thing probably was that the biggest lesson to be learned for every player is that every fundamental error that we made in technique has a consequence. And we didn't play very well in certain areas of our team because we didn't execute fundamentally the way we need to. And, you know, too many guys give you that, I thought I could do this. I don't care what you thought. What were you told to do? You know, what were you told to do? What's your job? What are you supposed to do here? How are you supposed to step? How are you supposed to block the guy? How are you supposed to play your gap? How are you supposed to blitz the hole? Whatever it is on any part of the team, that every guy on the team should learn the lesson that if you don't do things correctly fundamentally, there's going to be a consequence. And I think that's the thing that we really need to emphasize, you know, with our team is we've got to get better fundamental execution in a lot of areas. Now, there's a lot of good things in the game. You guys know what they were. I mean, but, you know, my focus as a coach on it's great to get a win is how much are we going to improve from last week to the next week. And that's, you know, what we want to try to build on. And most good teams will make a significant amount of improvement from last week to this week. Most of the new players that played, did not play as well as what, you know, we had anticipated or hoped, whether it's anxiety, first game jitters, whatever. We need to make an improvement in that area. We did not play with the consistency up front in the offensive line that we need to execute with. And, you know, we've, you know, looked at some different combinations of guys in that particular game. And, you know, we'll make some evaluations throughout the course of this week and see what we can do to try to, you know, make that situation a little bit better. So, you know, we had some real positive performances. Offensively, Barrett Jones and Eddie Lacy are the offensive players of the week. Courtney Upshaw and Daquan Menzie, both defensive players of the week, and specialists Marquis Maze, Will Lowry, Trey DePriest, and Vinny Sinceri on special teams did a really, really good job. Kevin Norwood is really the only guy that we had that has a little bit of a sprained ankle that may not practice today but should be back in a day or two. I know you're going to ask me about the quarterback situation, and, you know, we're going to continue to develop both of the quarterbacks that we have. We're not going to name a starting quarterback today. And, you know, later in the week, as we see how the two guys practice, we'll, you know, make a determination as to which guy will give us the best opportunity in this particular game, or if there's some combination of the two that would be helpful and useful to us, we'll look at, you know, the option of doing that. But I think the most important thing that we want to focus on with both quarterbacks is what do we need to do to play as well as you're capable of playing and continue to improve and work through with both guys the importance of doing the little things right and the fundamental things right so that you can play the way you're capable of playing. And I think, you know, both guys are capable of playing better than they did. Not that we're disappointed in either one of them, but we still feel like we have two really good players at that position, and both of those guys will continue to develop and help us somewhere down the road. Penn State is, I think, you know, a very, very good team, a much different team than we played a year ago. They seem like they play faster. I think the circumstances down here, it was real hot last year, probably affected them a little bit. They have more experience. The quarterbacks are playing better, which is probably the biggest key offensively. They have some very good runners. The strength of their team on offense is probably their 3 returning receivers that were all very productive last year. They have 7 starters back on defense, and then a couple other guys that have started in the past and played in the past that were injured last year or whatever that are going to come back and play. So this is more a veteran team in terms of the experience that they have, and they were a good football team last year, and we think will be a totally different team. They traditionally play very well at home, and they're like 37-6 or something like that in the last 5 or 6 years, playing in home games. Haven't lost many games to non-conference opponents at home for a long time. So there's a lot of challenges here for us, but you know, we have to play on the road for the first time, and this will be a good experience for us down the road. You know, this is the kind of team. Penn State is always the kind of team that they don't give you anything. You have to go take what you're going to get by playing sound, solid, fundamental football, and not giving them anything in the meantime, and going to have to beat them with good fundamentals, because play on the line of scrimmage well, play blocks well, have good eye control and discipline in what you're doing, and that's no matter what position you play. So this is a good team that we're playing, and all Joe Paterno coach teams are fundamentally sound in everything that they do, and you have to match that with good preparation and good practice so that you have an opportunity to execute the way you need to against these types of teams.
Coach, I have 2 questions. First of all, regarding the quarterbacks, in a game like this at Penn State where it's going to be a tough challenge, would you prefer to be able to pick one guy and stick with that person through the game?
Well, you know, that's a hypothetical question. You know, we know where we're playing this week. We know what it's like to play there. We played there before. And we know what our quarterback situation is, and I already addressed that.
Okay, and secondly, Duron Carter, what kind of physical shape is he in, and what kind of role could he play in this game?
He's good. You know, he practiced six practices, really practiced hard, gave really good effort. I was pleased with the physical conditioning he was in, and he's been able to implement himself, you know, with some practice time in pads now. So we're going to see how he picks things up and see what kind of a contribution that he can make.
First off, you touched on the lack of consistency on the offensive line. How hard is it? We know how, I mean, we've talked about how hard it would be for a player to play in 3 positions, but how hard it is as a unit when you kind of shuffling around a little bit?
Well, I don't think that's the case. You know, when you play on your toes and put your head down and whiff the linebacker, what's that have to do with who's playing where? It don't matter if you're playing center, guard, tackle, tight end. It really doesn't matter which position you're playing to be able to get your second step on the ground and butt the guy in the throat and finish the block. So, you know, that's all BS to me. And, you know, guys talk about communication, and so we need to communicate better, we need to play better, but we need to play with better fundamentals. And I don't think it has anything to do with that, quite honestly. But, you know, that would be a great thing for you to make a big deal out of publicly, but it doesn't really mean jack you know what.
And could you talk a little bit, I mean, I know it's only 1 game, but Cyrus, is how he's developed since camp started and how he did in the game?
Cyrus did a good job in the game. And I think, like a lot of freshmen, you know, freshmen sort of go where they improve, and then they kind of hit the wall. And maybe the cumulative effect starts to get them a little bit, and they almost regress a little bit, and then they get their sea legs back and start making that same kind of improvement. And I think that's kind of happened in the last week or so with Cyrus, and he played well in a game, and I think that game experience will be helpful to him.
Because of the popularity of these neutral site made-for-TV games, are we going to see fewer of these home-and-home games between conference powers and the like, and is that a good thing or bad thing for college football?
Well, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. I think, you know, probably a combination of those things are probably good for college football. I know that regardless of where they played the games, you know, some of the games that were on this past weekend probably were very interesting to a lot of people. You know, one game was played at a home site, Baylor and TCU, which is a great game, and There were a couple other good games that were neutral site games that were, interesting to watch for a lot of folks. And so I think there's good and bad in both, and I don't think there is a significant consequence to it either way. But I think that it almost goes without saying that you can say they're made for TV, but the TV and the exposure that college football gets from TV is a tremendous asset for college football.
Coach, I have two. One, and I understand you went through this last year because Penn State played here, but could you revisit again your relationship with Coach Paterno and just sort of what he's meant to you in your coaching career?
Well, I think that you have to go a long way to find somebody that didn't have a tremendous amount of respect for Joe Paterno, not just in terms of the numbers of games that he's won, the longevity that he's had in the same program, and the consistency that program has had for, 46 years now. I mean, I remember when I was a kid in West Virginia going to a game to see Penn State play and him running out of the tunnel when I was a kid. And then the way he does it, just the character that his teams play with, the character they have, how they represent college football, the principles and values that are ingrained in the program, I think make it first class, make him first class all the way around. But he's been a tremendous asset for college football. He's got great interest in the rules and the well-being of the players. And, I told the story last year about Dwayne Goulburn, who was going to be ineligible and had to get in graduate school to get a 6th year and couldn't get in graduate school but could get in a continuing ed program, and they had to change the rule in the Big Ten. And Joe was the head of the committee, and he changed the rules so the guy could play. And lo and behold, we're up there playing the last game of the year, and Goulburn runs 50 yards for a touchdown and ties the game up with a couple minutes to go in the game and gave us a chance to win. But that never fazed him. It was the right thing for the young man, and he did the right thing, and he's always been about that, not just about, what's good for his team. And he's a good friend. Him and Terry are, like Italian buddies, so they get along great.
And second, back to Saturday's game, on a day when the offense was a little bit of a work in progress, could you talk about what Marquis Maze meant, both offensively and special teams?
Marquis had a, really, really good game. Did some good things for us on special teams, changed field position, especially with the punt returns. Had 8 catches offensively, and we knew that we were going to put him in some positions in the game where he was going to have some opportunities, and he certainly played well. But he's not been able to practice, and he did get a little bit tired in the game, which affected him as the game wore on, which is something that we need to remedy down the road. So, but we need obviously more players on offense to be able to make big plays, especially at skilled positions, and we need to execute better we need to execute better overall as an offensive team, so more guys will have opportunity to do that.
Yeah, Coach, Alabama and Penn State both have a lot of tradition and history in football. You've coached, places that have had that and at places that haven't. Can you talk about from the program standpoint what the pluses of that are?
I don't know for sure if I know exactly what you're asking me, but I think that tradition is something that we all value, quite honestly, and I think everybody that's associated with the tradition here values it, because there's a significant number of people who have worked hard through the years to make the tradition what it is, and I think there's a tremendous pride in that for everyone. And I think that when you play in games like this, you have to have a lot of pride in not only yourself and how you go about it, but also what you represent. which is the tradition and all the people who've worked hard to make it what it is, and your responsibility to make sure that you're performing, playing, coaching, whatever it is that sort of elevates that standard to what it needs to be.
A lot of different players got a chance on the kickoff team against Kent State. Are you still searching for the right 11 there, or are those changes just more based on what you were trying to do with the kickoff?
Well, I think that, you know, we had some guys that did extremely well on kickoff coverage. We had 4 or 5 guys that really did a good job. We had a couple other guys that did an okay job, and then we had a couple guys that probably didn't do it quite the way we'd like for it to be done. And I think those guys have an opportunity to step up their game a little, and we also have an opportunity to look at other people that we think might help them step it up. So, but that's that way at every position. I mean, you know, just because you played last week doesn't mean you're entitled to play this week. I think somebody told me there were like 30 former Pro Bowl players that got cut this past weekend or something. Is that right or wrong? I can't justify or verify that statistic, so I'm not trying to get quoted, but how does that happen? How does that happen?
Salary cap.
Well, but it doesn't happen because I've been in the salary cap. You don't cut any good players because of the salary cap. You don't cut anybody that's being productive on your team because of the salary cap. So some kind of way those guys can't stay in what's happening right now to understand what they need to do is about now, like this week, this game, this practice, this preparation. And I have to go perform and have a high standard of excellence that I'm going to perform to, or there's somebody out there going to take my place. That's what it means. And I know you guys think that once you get a depth chart, it's like chiseling that baby out in gold. It's got to stay that way for the rest of the time, but it ain't that way at all. I can promise you that.
Not to make you reminisce too much more than we have, but that scene before last year's Penn State game with Coach Bowden and Coach Paterno on the field, it looked like you were having as much fun as they did. I think you even smiled. What was that like for you?
Nothing
And
unusual about that.
take us through that, if you would.
Well, first of all, you know, personally, I really like Bobby Bowden and I really like Joe Paterno. And I've known both guys for a long time, and at different stations of my career, you know, have looked up to them. I mean, I said as a kid, you know, as a kid growing up, Bobby Bowden was a coach at West Virginia. You know, played against him as assistant coach, and just, you know, just have always looked up to him. But, you know, the stations of your career sort of make you realize and respect what they do even more, and how long they were able to do it, and the success that they had. I mean, I don't even know how many games I've won as a head coach, but I know it's not as third as many as Joe Paterno has. And I think about that and I say, I mean, that's unbelievable. It is unbelievable that you would be able to sustain at the same school for all these years and do it in such a first-class fashion, you know, in every way. So I love those guys. You know, I love Coach Stallings. You know, I have such respect for coaches. I guess when you grow up as a player and your coach means so much to you, and maybe besides your parents, your coach meant more to you than anybody else. And my high school coach, probably, other than my parents, was much of a significant impact on me and my future and career and going to college and doing all these things that anybody had. So, you know, you kind of look up to people in a special way that are coaches when you're a player. And so now these guys, to me, are the highest of the highest when it comes to people in our profession. So, I absolutely love them, and I love what they do and how they've always done it.
Just wondering, looking at tape, what did you see from the other receivers outside of Maze in their competition?
Well, I think that we had a lot of young guys playing. I don't think they played fast all the time. I think there was a lot of anxiety. I don't think we had very good ball security. I don't think we looked balls in. I think we played with in a hurry. You know, cut the routes a little bit short, don't do it exactly right, which, you know, sort of affects the timing of what you're trying to do and makes it a little bit more difficult for everybody. But I think it goes right back to the fundamental discipline of playing and understanding the importance of doing it right and getting it right. And I think a lot of players are going to learn a lot from that game. And I think it'll help their performance in the future.
Thanks, Coach.
All right, thank you.